Hello, friends. We are welcome our new and interesting topic: how did British Empire take over India? In 1686, the British East India Company declared war on the Mughals. Aurangzeb was on the throne at the time. This war is said to be a big blunder, because the army of the East India Company was quite small and weak in comparison to the Mughal army. So it was not surprising that the Mughals defeated the East India Company very easily. The EIC factories in India were seized. Many EIC officials were arrested, and the incumbent governor of the company had to bow down to Aurangzeb. Despite this, about 300 years later, East India Company, this foreign company, established control over the entirety of the Indian subcontinent. Even the biggest company that you can think of now, Apple, Google, Facebook, East India Company was much bigger and more powerful than any of these companies. How was this possible? Come, let's try to understand this in today's video. British East India Company, the company that ruled India and a large part of the Indian subcontinent. Britain destroyed India through looting, expropriation, and outright theft. The British continent was a Rouge multinational corporation, like no other, one that was set out to trade, but also have powers to take land, to wage war, and also resolve peace. Friends, our story begins in the year 1600, when the East India Company was founded by some merchants. It was a joint stock company, i.e., its business was owned by shareholders. At the outset, there were only 125 shareholders. They came together to raise £70,000 as capital. The object to create this company was to trade in spices in the Spice Islands of Southeast Asia. The next year, in 1601, the East India Company undertook its maiden voyage and set up 2 factories in Indonesia. Back then, on the Indonesia islands, Spanish and Portuguese traders were already in business. Additionally, the Dutch traders had recently begun trading in the area. The Dutch company was more profitable than the English company. They had more money and a better army. With time, they became the dominant power in the area. The British East India Company realized that they needed to shift their operations, because there was no scope for competing with the Dutch. To avoid conflict, they started looking at other areas, eventually considering India. There were many spices and textiles in India. So in 1608, EIC merchants reached India and landed in present-day Surat, Gujarat. The Mughals were ruling over the country. The Mughal army consisted of 4 million armed soldiers, extremely powerful. The officials of the company knew that it'd be futile to fight them, so they decided on trying to establish a friendly relationship so that they could get permission to trade. They tried to appease the local ruler. The captain of the ship, Captain William Hawkins, traveled a long way to Agra, the Mughal capital. There he met the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. He tried to ask him for permission to set up a factory to commence trading in Surat, but Jahangir refused to grant the permission. The simple reason for this was the presence of Portuguese traders in Surat. The Portuguese traders had good relations with the Mughals, so Jahangir had no reason to enable their competitors, the English, British traders. Since EIC couldn't get permission to trade in Mughal territory, the EIC traders decided to move to other areas in India, a territory not controlled by the Mughals. That was under another ruler. In 1611, they were successful when they set up their first factory in Andhra Pradesh's Machilipatnam. They were given permission by the local ruler. Over the next years, the East India Company established more factories and worked hard to gain a foothold in the Indian subcontinent. While doing so, they were constantly in the way of conflict with the other European traders. In 1612, they returned to Surat and declared a war against the Portuguese traders. It was named the Battle of Swali. Portuguese lost the battle. Following this, the Portuguese influence started diminishing, and they were mostly restricted to the areas around Goa. East India Company became the biggest player in the Indian subcontinent. After this win, in 1615, the East India Company requested the English King James I to send a royal representative to the Mughal emperor. With his aid, the Mughal emperor may be inclined to agree. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel and stay connected with us more interesting.